Hey everyone, Tanner here from TrueTan Wrestling. I had the honor of interviewing Cody Brewer. Yeah, that's right, 2 national champs in a row. Also, if you haven't seen the Darian Cruz interview yet, please go check that out. It was so much fun to do. But speaking of fun, this interview was awesome. Cody Brewer is a really cool dude and a great person to interview with interesting stories to share throughout. For those who don't know, he was a one-time national champion and a 4-time All-American at Oklahoma. He now coaches at Virginia Tech, so be on the lookout for him there. Now, last thing to mention before we go through with the interview, the full interview that was unedited is available on Patreon, and it was available for about over a week, so if you have some spare cash, consider supporting me on there. You get early access to content, and your name will be at the end of almost every video. However, I get everyone can't support me on there, so just be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Now, let's run the tape. How is coaching at Virginia Tech?
It's good, man. It's good. This was my third season. Just finished up third season with the COVID season that was short, and then my first year that got all the way to NCAAs and then stopped. But third season, but full season. So first full season here, and it was really good. So
That's awesome. How was it just transitioning, like when you were an athlete to a coach? Like what was that transition sort of like?
it was a little different under the aspect of like you go from having, it kind of be about you and about your teammates to now, you're caring about other people and how they do and transition of, I think the technical side of it, you're not, maybe something I could pick up real easy. I have to now show to guys and break down the technique and do all that. So I think the transition, it was good, but it was definitely tough at first of like trying to, I think, explain things, to break things down, maybe the way I did it or how I learned it. And so it always, there's always challenges, but it was fairly easy. I knew I wanted to do it probably about midway through college. So the transition kind of already started of like, these are kind of the ins and outs of it and what it's going to look like. I think I kind of, when the recruiting process, you kind of try to identify, like, I usually try to identify a couple things of like what worked, for me and what I see in kids. And I've been lucky to be around when I was at Northwestern. I went from Oklahoma to there and kind of jumped in that transition. So I didn't do any of that early recruiting. And then Sebastian Rivera was my first guy probably that I coached full through. I was with him for 3 years. Super entertaining guy to watch. And just his tenacity and his toughness was probably one of the toughest kids I've ever been around, as far as just his willingness to train, to do the right things. He was fairly easy. After a while, I always told him I became like a fan more than a coach of just watching him. You're just like, all right, I'm excited to watch and see what he's going to do.
Yeah, he's had some electric NCAA matches, historical matches.
Right. So he was probably the first guy. And then now at Tech, I've gotten to work with some guys that it's gotten, a couple more, I should say. When I was at Northwestern, it was basically me and Sebastian for the most part. A couple other guys trickled through that they have now. They're doing really well, which is good to see. And then at Tech now, it's been Sam Latona, who was an All-American for me last year. I've worked a lot with him. Corbin Myers was a 2-time All-American. So there's been a handful. I got a couple new guys coming in. Eddie Van Treska from New Jersey is going to be possibly in the lineup next year. Cooper Flynn as well.
Yeah. They both had great redshirt years for sure.
Yeah. So it's getting better and better, man. I got no complaints of the quality of kids that I'm bringing in and that our coaching staff is bringing in, that what we want and what I can see, the areas they need to grow, but the things they're also really good at now. So
for sure. And then at Northwestern and Virginia Tech, what was kind of like the net, like when you were recruiting, like what were just some things you were looking at compared to Northwestern, Virginia Tech, and vice versa? Like, is there a certain culture you look for, a certain like style or anything like that?
Well, the big difference was academically. Northwestern, the academic.
They
I
have
think
a roster cap too, right?
it was at
Okay.
20, 324 when I was there, really low actually
Yeah.
for a big program. And they've, like I said, they did a great job with, then you really can't miss on kids in that aspect. You can't, the kids that you got to go get, you really got to get. And the biggest thing for us was like injury standpoint is that was a lot of things, keeping guys healthy. And you try to do that everywhere, but really there was no room for error. And then, like I said, the academics was just different. Northwestern was a top 10 school in the country, very hard to get into. You had to, pretty much excellent grades for the most part. Good, but excellent was the word there. And then it just seems like at Tech, the culture's different. We're talking, 20 minutes outside of the city of Chicago. Here, you're in a rural, big campus atmosphere in that way, rural area. But it's like, in Chicago, there's 100 sports teams, right? There's the Bulls, the Bears, you got the White Sox, everything is there. In Virginia Tech, we are like the pro sports here for the most part. College athletics is, and that's kind of how it was when I was at Oklahoma, and I really liked that atmosphere. So when I got here, looking at the job, I really appreciated that. I was like, this is it. This is Virginia Tech sports is, it's the pro sports here. So I feel like the culture is just different in that way. I think at Northwestern, it was people were coming out to watch, but the crowds here at Virginia Tech have been bigger, and then just the people that are invested in the Virginia Tech athletics is seems to be more in the short time that I was there at Northwestern. It seems to be a lot more here, and people are really invested in wrestling, but just among all sports. Actually, Virginia Tech right now this year is doing really well at just about all the sports that we have for the most part, which is awesome. So, yeah.
No, I'm sure that that's like a big difference. Like at Northwestern, you could probably be like, yeah, we're right by Chicago, all this stuff to do. And then Virginia Tech, it's like, you can be the thing to do. So you were a huge recruit from Kansas City, Missouri. You went to Oklahoma. I'm just kind of curious what your recruiting process like. What were some other schools in the hunt, and just hear that story revolving around how you ended up at Oklahoma.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd say huge recruit. I appreciate that. I don't know if
no. No problem.
Some of these guys now, man, it's crazy. I think my recruiting process was fairly simple. I won, some state titles in Missouri. I placed at Fargo a couple of times. There was no Super 32, I don't think, until the end of my high school career. I may be wrong, but that stuff really wasn't around as much. Fargo was kind of got recruited in that way. And then my last year I took third at Fargo. So that was kind of like some coaches reached out. Northwestern was actually a school that reached out. Missouri, Oklahoma, and Virginia were kind of the ones I was looking at. I was Virginia and Northwestern got knocked down pretty early, just because I didn't want to go that far away from home. I wanted to be able to, my family to watch me wrestle was a big deal. And so that Oklahoma was about 5 hours away. Missouri was about 2. And I had been to Missouri. Our state tournament for high school was in Columbia every year. So I'd been there a bunch. On my visit, I saw some different things that I didn't see, which was cool. But once I got to Oklahoma, it was pretty easy for me. I had a high school teammate, or he was a little before me, but he went to my high school, Zach Bailey, and he was a 2-time All-American from Oklahoma as well. So I kind of known a little bit about the process, a little bit about the coaching staff, then through him a little bit. And he kind of told me his experience about it and said he had good experience and he enjoyed it. So when I took a visit there, I think it was like I took one to Missouri one weekend, Oklahoma was the next. The day I got back from Oklahoma, I committed to Oklahoma that day. Just everything they had to offer for me was just a good fit. The coaching staff, Coach Leitner, who was my coach all the way through, was a national champ as well. And that was kind of a big deal for me, that I was like, I really have to be around someone that's done it, to know what it takes, and to what, just the amount of work and time you have to spend. And I think him telling me those things, but just knowing that, that was the feel I got from being there, it was an easy choice. I just did. It wasn't, like I said, I liked Missouri a lot. I liked some of those other schools. But when I got to Oklahoma, it was fairly easy. I mean, even it went down to like the finer points of like even how they talked to my mother, on like the visit. They were so polite and so
Yeah.
nice. And like, it just, you don't think those little things that matter, but I'm like, they care. They want me here, and they may have done that to 100 recruits, but it made me feel, like I was the guy. And that was an easy transition and ended up turning out to be the best fit for me. So I was glad that I made that decision when I made it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, those little things definitely make a big difference. I hear it all the time with people like, yeah, I chose there just because they were nicer to me at the time. They seemed like they
Right.
actually wanted me there, from the guys who were on the team at the time to the coaches. So that's really awesome that those little things made history essentially with your career.
For
So
sure.
then you ended up at Oklahoma, redshirted your first year. What was it sort of like once you were actually committed and there a full year? What was it like adjusting to that like huge program? Oklahoma's a huge
Right.
program.
It was tough at first. I'm not
Mhm.
gonna lie. It was hard. I went from, being pretty tough in my high school room to everybody's good now,
Yeah.
and so
Yep.
there's no there was no, you know, easy way out at all. It was you got to find out what you can do and how much you can take. I tell people all the time with Division I wrestling, it's not how much you can dish out, it's how much you can take and keep going. A lot of
Yeah.
times because it just gets hard. I was in between two All-Americans at the time, Jared Patterson and Kendrick Maple. And those guys, I knew if I put myself around those guys that I would possibly have the success that they had or somewhat close to it. I didn't know how in depth it would make a difference, but I just remember that first year just trying to be like a sponge and just if there was individual workouts, I was asking to be a part of them. I was like, hey, I'll work out with you if you're going to do one with coach. I want to be a part of that and I want to learn and kind of got the ins and outs. I remember our head coach brought me on a couple trips just to see what it was going to be like. And I remember going to nationals even. That was kind of on my own, but going to nationals, meeting up with the team and going through that process before I was going to be there. And that was important to be like, could be you next year. So you got to be ready, to go. But definitely ups and downs. I think like every freshman does. But I just knew that if I kept, like I said, putting myself around the
Yeah.
right people, that it was going to change. I was going to hopefully make that next step. So.
So you transitioned to that freshman year in the lineup. What was it like being in the lineup finally? Were you confident going in? How'd you respond to some adversity and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was having that confidence, but just I just needed to compete was the biggest thing. I was so excited. That redshirt year is like you're going to different tournaments on your own, you're doing it on your own, and now you have a whole team of guys and there's more crowds, there's more people. I remember one of the first tournaments I went to was in Brockport, New York. It was like this tournament that Oklahoma always went to, and it was for years on. And I remember, I think it was like my semifinal match. I like hyperextended my elbow pretty bad, and was like, man, it just didn't feel good, and I got hurt a little bit, and I was kind of being a baby a little bit about it. I think I was like, they were like, we'll tape it up, and I was like, you got one more match, and I was like, okay. And the first part of the match, I remember I was getting crushed. This guy was just like beating me up. He's probably winning by 4 or 5. And then I just kind of was like, this is why you came here. And this is what this is what you got to get out of it. Ended up like throwing the guy to his back twice, ended up pinning him the second time. And then I was like, this is what college wrestling is. This is why you showed up. This is why you came. And was weird because it was like my first tournament for the most part. I was like, this is it,
What a
and
switch.
you got to find ways to win. And I didn't feel good, but dang, I felt good when I won. So a lot better than the elbow, time. But it's little things like that my first year that just, beating a ranked guy that maybe I wasn't supposed to beat or, just competing was the biggest thing. I just needed matches. And that was probably the biggest thing that I got that freshman year. I got quite a bit of matches against high level guys, against, guys that it didn't matter. It was just getting matches under my belt, getting college, in that way. The redshirt tournaments are good. You can get matches, but, it's never being in the Oklahoma State duel as a freshman or being in the, just the big time matches that we had, Iowa State. You had to be in all those matches. And I think I enjoyed that at least my first year. Just competing was the biggest thing.
Do you think that big schedule the Oklahoma schedule, you guys see a lot of really, really elite opponents. Do you think that kind of helped you in your first national tournament? And then how was your first national tournament becoming a All-American? What do you think just sort of propelled you to that?
Uh, I think it's funny because I've talked to a couple of guys on my team recently about this because they have asked me like just tournaments and how I adapted to it. And I don't know. I had a different mindset going into nationals. I was ready. I remember like telling the guys like my first match, I was so nervous because it was the first one, and I ended up 20 points or something. And I was like, all right, we're in it. This is how what you came and here for in that way. But I remember having the mindset of just like I wrestled Logan Stieber in the quarters, and he was a returning national champ. And just my mindset was so different. It wasn't the same as I had first round. It was let's just keep it close and try to win. And I got crushed, and it was like my mindset quickly flipped on the backside of, well, now you got work to do. Now if you want to place and do the right things, that you set out to do, prior to the year, you're gonna have to change your mindset. And then once I changed the mindset, it flipped. I had some pretty good matches on the backside. I avenged the loss for seventh that I had previous in the year, Missouri guy. So it was the way I wanted to finish, I should say, in the circumstances I was. But man, it just taught me a lot about being a tournament. I didn't even know once you All-American, you had another match after. So it was like, knowing that, I was like, oh man, I got to strap it on again. Like here we go. And I had to lose that probably because of that, because my mindset went back to, all right, I hope I win one, instead of saying, hey, you can win. Let's lock in and try to do it. So definitely the mindset was big during that tournament in general. Of the ups and downs of it are great. The highs I had, I was super excited. And then the lows were like, oh gosh, am I going to make it through this? It's time to, really lock in and try to do it. But yeah.
And then you were a two-time All-American going into your junior year, the national championship season. And I remember I didn't follow wrestling nearly as much as I do now, but I remember just following the Oklahoma season a little bit. I remember you lost to Earl Hall, and I remember you didn't wrestle for a while, a little bit of injury. And then you were back, and I was like, well, he only has one loss, so I can't believe he's the 13 seed. And then I was like, I remember DeJulius was having a good season. You were on the same side as Dardanes. And then all of a sudden it just was like, I like, this dude's an animal. I remember after your DeJulius match, I literally said to my dad, I'm like, this dude's unstoppable. So can you just kind of walk us through that tournament and what it was, the emotions of being a national champ?
Yeah, no. First off, super grateful to be in the spot that I was in. You never know where you're going to end up in that bracket sometimes. The previous years, I was like 8th. I was 13th again the year before, 13th that year. And just, the only year I was picked All-American was my senior year. And I think that's because I was a returning national champ in that aspect. But yeah, that was a whirlwind tournament of just probably the most relaxed I've ever been, but the best I've ever felt. Going into every match, it didn't really matter who it was. I had lost to Julius previous, that twice. It was just, I kind of know how he wrestles now. I've got to feel now it's time to go out and execute what I can do. And then, like I said, my mindset was always 10 points or more. And every time I hit that mark, it just was always like that much more juice and that much more, would get me excited for matches. I remember smiling after every match, just being so excited that I was just in those moments that, I don't know. I remember the Virginia kid I beat in the quarters, getting in the spot in the semis that night. I remember just being like, this is crazy. I'm in the NCAA semifinals, and I grew up watching guys on TV, and I just didn't think anything of it. I gave up the first takedown, I remember, in the semis, and just, it didn't even faze me. It was like, all right, that's one, whatever. He got one. Now I got to go get a couple more. And I just remember being so relaxed, but just so grateful for the moment. And then once I got to the finals, I knew I wasn't going to lose. Didn't matter who it was at the time. I could have had, Khabib or somebody. Whoever, anybody, and I was winning. In my mind, I was the best guy in the bracket that year by far. And just, I was the only one that I felt like could adapt to the circumstances that I had, getting injured halfway through the year, had a hard time coming back and making weight. Couldn't make weight for a while. I got really big in that way. And it just, all the adversity I dealt with that year, it was like, nobody can put up with this like I can. and now it's my time to prove it and show it. And it was cool because it was in St. Louis, and all my family were from Kansas City. So they were all there, experienced it all. And
that's I thought even better.
Yeah, the coolest part for them to be able to drive a couple hours to watch me compete at the biggest tournament. And yeah, I don't know. It took me a couple years ago, and I finally went back and watched all the matches of just the time, because I'd really never done it. And it was just like, wow, that was awesome. I mean, like, other than a couple moments of matches, I just was, yeah, it was crazy. And the cool thing is I get to, explain that to my kids one day, and they get to see it. And, my wife was actually there at the time. We were not together or anything, and she was watching. It's funny because she'll talk about it. She's like, I knew I was just going to marry you right then and there. And I was like, oh, I had no idea, but thanks for letting me know that we were going to get married. So that was probably the coolest part of it. Just so many moving parts. I had a lot of help from coaches. I had a lot of people standing in my corner, and it made the difference in the end, probably from me winning and just placing maybe again, or just getting to that level and not placing, whatever it may have been, to take that next step was awesome for me and the program at the time. So
it was a cool national tournament. And yeah, your performance was outstanding.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
No, of course. And then you graduated from Oklahoma, 4-time All-American, respectfully. Was there ever a conversation with the coaches or someone like, hey, do you want to go right into coaching, or do you want to try freestyle out for a little bit, make some world teams? Like, what was that conversation or thought process like?
Yeah. I always thought, I actually talked to Andrew Howe, who I ended up coaching with at Northwestern. He was at Oklahoma with me for a little bit too, which was awesome just to watch him. It was crazy. He was on my team at one time. Like, I remember telling him,
wow.
that was high school, man. And like, you were on my team. I remember.
I don't realize those. I didn't realize that connected. I thought he was done by the time. Huh. Wow. Crazy.
Yeah, so I had a year competing with him, and then he coached for 2 years.
Okay.
After that, but it just, the level of professionalism that he had and the intensity to the room, and just, it was crazy to me, because I remember talking to him when on his like recruiting trip, and I'm like, you're on a recruiting trip right now, and I'm one of your hosts. Like, I don't.
That is a little wild.
We were winning national titles before I was even, doing anything in high school. So, but it's just crazy how it all turned out. And I remember having a conversation with him, asking him about it, because he had done the circuit for a little bit. He had coached, and I was like, is there a way I can do both? Do you think I can do both? And he kind of explained to me, is like, you can, he's like, it's going to take a lot of work. And I knew I wanted to coach was going to be my career. And then on the freestyle circuit, I knew I could compete for a couple years and give that a shot as well. I competed for 3 years on the circuit. And then when I took the job at Tech, I stopped competing and retired. So it was an easier, like, I just knew that coaching was going to be my future. I love the freestyle game. I loved wrestling. It was time, to be done, and wanted to be done in that aspect. So.
Is there a preference between either folk style or freestyle that you have?
It's tough. I like the freestyle scoring. I should say that.
I can agree with that.
A lot of people don't like the writing time aspect and the top bottom game of folk style. I actually enjoy that part of it. I was the guy that scored points, but I also appreciate, people that can adapt to styles and wrestle just about anywhere. I think that's, especially the talent level now, people have to be good at, or at least comfortable in almost every position. So I appreciate the writing time aspect and having guys get turns on top. I think that's important. And then the folk style, it just seems like it's just so enjoyable for people in big matches. I don't know if we would have the same success if we wrestled freestyle all the time. I don't know if it would translate to a fan as much, and I don't know if it would translate to I don't know. I just don't know if people would enjoy it. Maybe the big points is great, but I think such the grind of folk style is what we were built on, and I think it helped us. I think it's helped us internationally as well. So I don't think the change. I don't know how it would go. You never know, but I would do either one. I would coach either one. I coach guys now in freestyle, and it's it's not really any much different, but I do like the folk style season. I do like what it brings out in big moments. So,
Yeah, I very much agree with a lot of those points. We never really will know. But I agree, like getting ready for someone who's really good on top, like that's what everyone's talking about. Or a
right.
guy who's really good on his feet. Plus, I really like what you said, the grind. I feel like you see it against some foreign opponents, like they just can't handle it. And I think that's just because folk style is a whole different lung set at times. So, who was, once you entered into the coaching field, what were some takeaways you took away from some of the greats at Northwestern, the head coaches there, and then now at Virginia Tech, were some legends as well?
Yeah.
Just to sort of develop your coaching style.
Right. Yeah. I think just the relationship aspect is really big. You don't realize it until you're in it and you're doing it, but it's just to develop relationships is my number one priority in coaching. It really is. I think if you can understand a kid and they can understand you, it makes a lot different. And then they're wrestling, maybe for you, they're wrestling for other things. The relationship is really big. And I think that's something I try to develop. It starts on the recruiting end a little bit and spending time with guys, being able to work out with guys, being able to do all those things right now. For me is really important. I think that's what I try to develop relationships with these guys, make them believe, brainwash them. One of our seniors, Corbin, just finished, and he always was like, he was telling me the best, and it almost got annoying all the time, but it was something I preached to him every single day, and that's something that I feel like, coaches do everywhere, but what makes me any different. Right. And it's the time that I put in, it's the sacrifice of this or that or doing that. It's like, well, this is where I got to do, this is where I got to be. And to be the best, lightweight coach in the country, this is what I have to do, and I work with a lot of our guys, but I know that that's my job is that, probably 25 through 41, 49. And I need to get those guys in the best mindset and then spend the most time with them as much as I can, and that's whether that's spending time outside the room, it's spending time in the room. It goes hand in hand. My job never really stops in that way. And I don't want it to. I love it.
Yeah.
I would if I didn't love it. Wrestling is definitely not one of those sports. And you probably know as well that once you get in it, if you don't love it, you don't do it. You just, it's hard doing it and not enjoying it at all. And so that's what I enjoy about the job is it is a little bit of a grind at times, but that just shows me that I need to be on that, mental, level every time I do something where I spend time with a guy. It makes the difference. And then you get the moments, like I said, that guys All-American, guys place, guys do these things. And those are the moments I will remember for the rest of my life with college wrestling, is just having that moment where that guy beat that guy he wasn't supposed to, or this guy All-American's in a big round. And those are the moments you remember. I'm still working on a national finalist. We're going to get there in the next couple of years, but that's the moments I looked, is to get back on that stage, give that kid the best opportunity to win, just like somebody gave me, years ago. That's the moments I want. If I can sit in that coaching chair for the first 3 or 4 matches at 25 through there, I'm doing my job right.
Yeah.
We're not there yet, but it's getting closer to where I'm feeling confident that I can bring guys to the national tournament every year and we can really compete.
Last question that I sort of just love asking all the athletes I have on here. What was your overall favorite match of all time? Like, it could be from youth, it could be of anything, honestly.
Oh man.
You could even rattle off a couple. I'm totally fine with all that.
I'd probably say my last US Open final was pretty good. I got a big throw to get a fall in that match to win it.
Megaludus?
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
And that was cool because my wife got to watch that. So that was the fact that she got to watch me compete a couple of times. I lost this match, but I wrestled at the Oregon. It was my first year on the circuit. And I wrestled a Japanese guy that ended up Higuchi, who was second in the world. And our match was 14-14 until I got caught and pinned. So I say got caught because I did get 14 points on him. I would say that. It was an exciting match against the high level guy.
If you remove the names, I'd say that's a Cody Brewer match right there, 14-14. I'll be like, dang.
right? No defense. I need to work on the defense, but the offense was. So there was a couple that one I remember, that U.S. Open match, and then probably just the magnitude of the NCAA's final match was just the atmosphere was probably the coolest thing, because I'd wrestled at Fargo and won Fargo and done that like of a bunch of people on a stage, kind of type deal. But nothing was like that NCAA tournament. The semis was kind of the same way, electric. I actually think I probably it felt like more fans sometimes at the quarters and semis than it ever did to the final. I knew all those people were there in the finals, but it was like, it just felt like I was kind of out there alone for the most, you're wrestling the other guy and that's kind of all that's going on. The semis and the quarters, I would say, felt like more fans were on top of you and just kind of that fear.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And then I remember wrestling a match at UNI that was pretty wacky as far as just duel wise. I remember I had won the match, but it was the crowd
in Northern Iowa,
and the crowd was
okay. Yeah.
I remember a couple people like yelling at my grandparents that showed up.
Jeez.
It just
I've heard it's wild there.
Yeah, and then there's a couple places. Obviously, Okie State, I've wrestled there, and it's always a good atmosphere there as far as just the amount of fans that they have, and our duels between them and Oklahoma are always big matches. So I've probably got a few, but yeah, I definitely the U.S. Open finals and a couple other ones really stick out as like my favorite in those ways of like people got to watch me. My wife got to watch me wrestle. That was important and all those moments. So, and I obviously won those matches. So those, for the most part, those were good.
Yeah,
good.
I bet.
But yeah, man, yeah, not too many, but there's definitely a couple that I will definitely remember. So
yeah, it seems like you've wrestled at some of just the best places you really can, which is probably fun to look back on. Definitely fun to look back on.
So I remember going to Cuba and wrestling out there. I wrestled the guy ended up winning at Bonet. I won the world, and I was up 6-0 on him, and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna beat this guy. And then he let me know quickly after that I was not gonna win. So it was. I think he ended up he's pretty tough, but it was cool experience though, just wrestling in Cuba, and he was a Cuban guy, and just some of the places I've been lucky to wrestle. It's cool, the atmosphere everywhere. I've always wanted to go to coaching now. I hope I get to go to like Iran and those places just to see what the atmosphere, because I heard it's crazy, but to see what the fans are like out there, because I know they're passionate about.
So all I got left is, how's recruiting going for Virginia Tech? I'm sure this is a huge time for you guys right now, and hopefully it's all going well. Yeah.
All recruiting is going well. We're trying to, find those guys they're going to fit our program and hopefully have success. It's tough because there's so many wrestlers out there. So like more than what you would think. I can't imagine how football does it, just with the amount of kids that play football. Yeah. But there's a lot of kids out there. Yeah. And we're just trying to, find out the guys that are going to be a good fit for our program. I think that's, when you talk about recruiting, it's always a fit. If guys fit in with the team, with the coaching staff, with, the area, all those things are always big. And I always tell kids that, hopefully it's the right fit, because you don't, with the transfer portal and the way things are, you don't really want to see kids just kind of pick up and go all the time. You want to see them see it out, in that way, and try to get the most out of, their experience. And don't get me wrong, we had Nathan Traxler last year from a transfer perspective. It was awesome. He's a great kid. And I was lucky to be around him as well. And so the transfers are great, and it obviously it can play to a lot of advantages too. But you want to see guys hopefully make the right decision, the first time in that way. And that's why I think becoming a fit and seeing if they're really, meant to be at Virginia Tech is really important now, because you don't want to see that happen all the time.
Yeah, for sure. It's good to hear, like, from a coach that they're more or less want to care for the athlete and make sure they're not leaving just all the time. And if it isn't the right fit, all right, but you guys want to keep them there for sure. I agree with that a lot. So, but Cody Brewer, thank you very much for doing this. If you have any questions for me, I'd love to answer them. But besides that, awesome interview.
No, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on. And anytime you want to bring me back, I'm game. So
Sweet. Awesome. Yeah.